So in this lesson, I want to talk to you about how to take your sketch and then import it into the computer. There's a couple ways that I do this, a couple simple ways that I go about doing that, and so I just want to share those tips with you. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to import our sketch, and I usually do this one of two ways, and actually let's say 3 ways. The easiest way is going to be when you have digital lines. What digital lines means is that you've sketched this whole thing out in the computer. And the nice thing about that is that when you do that, you can change the background color and you're going to have a crisp, clean sketch, which is great. If you didn't sketch it in the computer, then you're going to scan in your drawing. And so when you scan it in, it might look something like this. And so now I'll kind of just go over the 2 different ways to get this in. One way is that we use a scanner and import it via Photoshop or using the scanner printer scanning software. Another way is that I just take a picture of it with my phone and email it to myself. You have this background paper. You don't want this white box. So one thing you could do is, I like to kind of just use levels to punch up the contrast. So I just push that contrast a little bit and then take your layer and then just set it to multiply. Sometimes you still see a little bit of a box. Just go back to levels and then punch that up a little bit until most of that texture and that line is gone. When you take a picture, even if you take a picture with your cell phone or if you're scanning it in, not so much with scanners, but if you're taking a picture with your cell phone, try to make sure that you have even light. So a lot of times I'll just step right outside and get natural light and try to take a picture of it without casting any shadows over the paper. So it's a clear white picture of the actual drawing. The cleaner your scan or your picture is of the drawing, the easier it is going to be to clean it up. Once you've done all this, as I've mentioned in the previous videos, you want to make sure that your document is set up to 300 dpi. And then you can take this sketch and you can drop it into your canvas. I'm working on an 11 by 17 inch, but depending on what your character pose is, if you need a more vertical document or something more square, feel free to just kind of use that appropriately. We do want to be mindful with our composition and not let any of your character get too close to the edge. Try to follow some of these steps to try to get a nice clear line art, but don't worry about it being 100% perfect. A lot of these lines will be completely lost in the final art piece. Those are just a couple options of getting it scanned in. And like I said, sketching it digitally in Photoshop will give you the best results because then you don't have to try to remove that background. Either way, I think you'll be completely fine. It's very couple steps to get it cleaned up. And after you do that, we'll get started on painting. So now that we're done importing our sketch, just want you to remember once again that you don't really have to worry too much about the lighting on your sketch when you take a picture or scan it in. We can always adjust those in Photoshop later. Let's move on to the mood board. The mood board really is a crucial part of the process because once you get started on painting, it's what your guide is as you continue to move along and try to figure out what textures you want to use. It just makes it more efficient when you have a mood board with you and you use that as a guide in your painting process. You don't have to have a digital copy of it on your screen. You know, if you have 2 screens, then that's great. You know, you could have it on one side and paint on the other. One of the things that I like to do sometimes is I'll just have a printout of the mood board and I'll have it just kind of pasted in my workspace and I'll glance over it. The important thing is that you have a guide that you're looking at while you're painting. So for me, for example, with this panda that I'm painting, and just that character, what he's going to be wearing, you'll see that I have a mask in there. I have like one of those knitted cap masks, and that, you know, will help me understand the texture of that mask and what that looks like. Another thing that you'll see in there is the reflective chrome. And so I have that in there just to kind of help me understand, what does chrome look like? What kind of reflections do you really see, and how does that behave with different lighting scenarios? And then also I have examples of rusted painted metal. And then that'll help me with some of the parts where I have that kind of texture in my image. So again, there's no rule what needs to be in there. It's really just what you feel is gonna help you understand what you're gonna be painting. Sometimes you forget, what fur looks like. In this lesson, I'm gonna be painting a panda. So it's important to see, the texture of the fur and what that looks like. You know what it looks like up here. Everyone knows what a bear looks like, right? But seeing that photo really helps you pick up on little details that maybe you didn't think about. So when you combine that with all the other things that we've already learned in the other videos about structure and being organized, this is also being organized, and it helps you focus more on painting and less about all these other things. Now moving along into the next video, we're going to talk about masking our character and the importance of doing that before we get started on painting.